Morning. This is Trango at the California ISO. Thank you for joining us for the release user group on November 14, 2023. As a reminder, today's call and webinar will be recorded and published on the ISO website for a limited time. And participants are muted upon entry, so you may need to unmute yourself via the WebEx as well as your audio line to make a verbal comment and or ask a verbal question. You also are able to put a message in the chat, and I will monitor that throughout today's review as well. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. As usual, we'll have our training update, and Cynthia is on to provide that. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Morning. As you can see, tomorrow we will have the transmission registry upgrade training, so that's from 9 to 11. At this point, they're the pre-training release surveys on there, but at this point, I think it's probably too late to use that for the transmission registry upgrade training, but we will be continuing with that with our future releases. Also, as always, if you're looking for more training materials, we have those out on the ISO Learning Center. There are computer-based trainings, presentations, and also our readiness notes are posted out there as well. So if you are looking for information, it's a good place to start. That's really all I have for now. Any questions?
All right. I don't see any hands raised and no messages in the chat. So Cynthia, thank you for that great update. And we look forward to tomorrow's training session for those that can join. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the release plan summary. So you'll see this is a little bit shorter because the fall release that activated November 1st is removed from this list. So I wanted to go through the list here and highlight some changes. We have an update on release communication. And then when we go to independent 2023 releases, we do have several items still queued up for the remainder of 2023. We have ADS changes to partial acceptance functionality, including the UI change to ADS. That's targeted for November 15th, so we have a slide for that. We have a new item to the RUG for the ETAG auto approval change for ETAGs submitted after T-20, and that is also targeted for production implementation tomorrow. I have a slide for that we will review as well. We have our returning topic of the URL and IP changes, including the acceptable use policy changes that are associated with the API, new URLs, and infrastructure. And the schedule for the phases of that implementation are tomorrow, November 15th for the first phase for production API, and then January 9th, 2024 for the final phase of the API. We also have remaining UI activities that we'll touch on lightly, but we'll have a lot of focus on the API work as that is more impactful. Then we'll have a quick update on variable O&M cost review, on track for effective date December 1st. And then for TR system upgrade, as Cynthia mentioned, we have the training tomorrow that's on the ISO calendar. The market simulation is targeted to start this week on November 16th, and production is still on track for December of this year, wrapping up our activities, our major activities for 2023, right? When it comes to 2024, we have moved the RSEE Phase 2 Track 2 post-task curtailment implementation to this section. The market simulation, again, is targeted to start late November, and the activation is planned for February 2024, so we do have the slides there that we'll cover. And then we have all of the existing items in 2024 and beyond. So I will briefly go through those items and just highlight the significant changes for TSMSP2 Transmission Exchange Agreement, RSEE Phase 2 Track 3, Hybrid Resources 2C, CRR upgrade, and then DAME and EDAM. So we are still working through building out the release plan and making the updates available to you in a future RUG, but I will cover what we have incrementally today and then take any questions. All right. So I'll go ahead and move on. Please stop me at any time for questions. I see a hand from Tenyu. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Trang. I have two questions. Thank you for the information here. For 2024 release, we will not know whether the scope is locked until probably first quarter of next year.
Yes. Yep. We, at this point, do not anticipate significant changes, as I've mentioned before, as our priority and focus remains on DAME and EDAM for fall of 2025 with an activation of spring 2026. So with that intent and priority in mind, we want to make sure that we have the right focus and don't add a lot to the 2024 release plan that would take our resources and our efforts away from DAME and EDAM. So in Q1 of 2024, that's reasonable to expect that, us to lock in a release plan for 2024 and have more certainty. And again, I want to set the expectation that we don't anticipate a lot of changes.
I see. And I also have a colleague ask me about the price formation, whether that it's going to get on to the 2024 or the future release. I'm not sure if you have any updates. If not, then we can, we'll definitely wait for CAISO's further announcement.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I don't have certainty on that one for implementation. I am following along with the stakeholder initiatives, and we'll coordinate with our internal departments on the release plan for that. And I will incorporate that into a future RUG, even if we don't have certainty on the plan when we get to a point where we can start including it just for visibility. So I think in Q1, even if it's not locked in yet, I'll start bringing visibility to that in the RUG so that we can maintain an alignment with policy even until we, while we work through the release plan for that one and other initiatives that are in the same phase.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. All right, and I also, for a price formation to, just want to remind folks, I did allude to that now, but just as a reminder, for things that aren't on the release plan and are not on the RUG yet, please visit the CAISO.com stakeholder initiatives page to follow along and engage with those initiatives that are still in the stakeholder phase and haven't quite made it to the implementation release plan yet. And I know that there were some workshops for price formation that have happened, and other information is available. So please take advantage of that as well. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to release communication. So one update here for market simulation fall 2023, the functional environment, as we mentioned before, now that fall 2023 release is in production, the market simulation fall 2023 functional environment is no longer available in Citi, and we will no longer be creating the seasonal options for market simulation. So market simulation specific inquiries and questions and issues can be submitted with a Citi with a functional environment of just market simulation, regardless of the release or effort. Okay. All right, so I'll go ahead and move on to our independent 2023 releases. In the last RUG and in the last couple of TUGs, we mentioned the ADS change to partial acceptance functionality. There were notices that have gone out for this scope as well as the market simulation activity and production target. So there's no changes to the scope here. And just a reminder that there's an associated UI change for ADS and then the tech specs. So I want to draw your attention to the schedule at the bottom here. The unstructured market simulation did conclude on November 9th. However, as usual for MapStage functionality, the changes remain active in MapStage for those that want to continue testing, but we did conclude the formal window for the market simulation so that we could move on to prepare for production deployment, which is targeted for tomorrow, right? I don't see any hands raised or any chat questions, so I will go ahead and move forward to the next effort. So this is new to the RUG. However, so this is new to the RUG, and you'll see associated announcements out. So with the change for ADS, we also have a change for ETAG auto approval. And basically, I want to draw your attention to what to expect after the change and what the current process is. So before the change, as in current production right now, the ISO auto approves any late ETAG submitted after the T-20 timeline. And then after the change that's planned for tomorrow, the ISO will no longer auto approve ETAG submitted after the T-20 deadline due to the reliability impact of late ETAG. And then the ISO operations team will continue or may still continue to manually review and approve late ETAGs on a case-by-case basis for reliability purposes. And you'll see that below the linked operating procedures that are associated. On the Learning Center, you'll also see a readiness note for this, as well as the previous ADS item. Okay. All right, so that's it for this change. So we'll go ahead and move on to the UI and API URL and IP changes. So no changes to this slide. This is just the different areas we're impacting and then overall what the user impacts and actions were. So I want to draw your attention to the current notice specific to the API. As we've been mentioning and an increasing focus on the API production effort, there have been multiple discussions on the RUG and the TUG forums, and this information, and then also multiple notices. So this information is the latest to kind of consolidate and focus on what to expect for the API changes for production. So, so we have two phases that we've been mentioning. Phase one is planned for tomorrow, where we will introduce new API URLs in production. And with that, you'll see kind of 4 categories of changes related to the new API infrastructure: new IP addresses, new certificate authorities, global rate limit, global rate limit, and then the service level AUP for CMRI, DRS, and MRIS. And then for phase 2, which is planned for January 9 of 2024, the existing production APIs will be moved over to new infrastructure. So no URL changes. However, the same technical requirements that you see above for IP, certificate authority, global rate limit, and the AUP, those will become effective for the existing URLs on January 9th. Okay. So I want to stop as I do see a question, and then we can cover some more detail. We have a question about the Verizon certificates issued by the UAA and if those will continue to work for the API. All right, so let me table that and then go to some of the further slides, and then we'll see if that answers your question. Okay. And I see, Stanley, you have a hand up too. I can take your question now as well.
Yeah, thanks, Trang. On the MRIS retrieves and the 30-second enforcement, I think we've been working with you guys and in discussions on that. It's documented as an AUP policy today, right? But it's not being enforced in production, but it is in map stage, it looks like right now. And we've got some concerns with that. We have to make some code changes to accommodate for that. So we may need to talk through the production changes and what our timeline is for patching clients for that.
Okay, understood. And so I will take that back to a team too. So I want to just kind of frame that in what I have here too, is that for the new API URLs that that MRIS or settlement AUP will be active, but not for the existing URLs until January 9th. So it's really that January 9th timeframe that we're going to have that discussion on, Stanley, to make sure that we don't impact your customers. So I have an action item to and then we can go from there. But are you in agreement to that the phase 1 for tomorrow, you're not concerned about that, right?
Yeah, I think the phase 1 I think is okay. We'll work together towards that January 9th target.
Okay, thank you for confirming.
Yep, thanks.
All right. Yep. Okay, so I'll go ahead and move on to some of the existing material that we have and hopefully answer some of the questions, the additional questions that we have about user search. Okay, so this is a summary of the changes. It's just, again, the same information. And again, the emphasis really here is that we are doing it in a different way than we released this and cut over in MapStage. So, so this is just to reiterate that information. I won't really go over that in detail. And again, as mentioned, thank you to PCI for putting the flow together to better illustrate this effort for our market participants. And so again, this is in the TUG material. We did go over this, and this is really here for reference, so I won't go over that in detail because I think most of you are familiar with it, but we're again happy to take any questions later on. Okay, and then this is the URL formats that were already cited in the notice. So I'll go through that, and then you'll see all of the URLs that are impacted there, and then what the new URLs will be that are going to be made available tomorrow, and then what the existing URLs are that will be cut over to new infrastructure in January. Okay, for the new certificate authority, I added some details based on the questions that we've received. So this is, again, for from the change from Verizon to Entrust. This is specific to your servers and your application trust stores and not user certificates. And this is guidance on what that will look like when you set that up on your servers. So this is new information based on the questions that we've gotten, and Saqib, I'm going to go over this, and then if you still have a question, then I'm happy to reach out to you offline on it too. So for API customers, when it comes to the certificate authority, you'll want to add the 2 Entrust certificates to your application trust stores on your servers. And then for customers, will you be able to access the current production API URLs after adding these? Yes. So what that translates into is that for this Entrust certificate change, adding that to your trust store, we encourage customers to do that as soon as possible to allow access to the new API infrastructure either via the new URLs available tomorrow or after January 9th for the existing URLs. And I think that covered number 2 and number 3. And then for the last item, how will user certificates be impacted? So I think there may be some confusion or clarification that would be helpful here, because our user certificates are also going through the transition from Verizon to Entrust. However, I want to reiterate that for this API change in production, there's no changes that are needed to user certificates. They will follow the normal, user certificates will follow their normal life cycle. So if you have an existing user certificate now that is still on Verizon, it will still be able to access the new API infrastructure. And once your user certificate expired, then once it's renewed, it will go to Entrust on its own timeline specific to that user certificate. So you don't have to do anything extra for user certificates that are still on Verizon. Okay, and that example below kind of explains that a little bit, and I'll update the dates. It's not 11/9 and 12/21, but it's going to be, again, 11/15 and January 9th of 2024. Okay, so Saqib, I hope that answers your question, but I'm going to take what you sent me in the chat offline so that I can reach out to you separately unless you want to add anything right now. Okay, and then Chanyu, I see your hand up, so please go ahead.
I just see the third question. It says, when should customer add the 2 Entrust certificate to the production server application trust store? And I just see the timeline should be done prior to November 9th. So, I mean, it can be also done right now, right? Not only prior to November 9.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, that should be in 15 because that's when the new API URLs will be available. But yes, so you can do that now because what you're doing is you're adding those certificates to your trust store. You're not changing anything that's there, so it will not disrupt your access to the current production APIs.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, and I got a confirmation from Saqib that I will reach out to him offline. Thank you. All right, so I'll go ahead and move on. This is just references to the API and trust certificates. We still have UI transitions, UI URL transitions that are in progress. So these will come in separate notices to those that are provisioned to those applications or just via customer notice in general. So you can see that there are still some that are in parallel mode with the new UI URL and the old one available and yet to be set to be deprecated with the dates there. And then we have still looks like 2 new production URLs to provide for reporting and for the market participant portal that you'll receive upcoming notices for. All right. Okay, so let me go ahead and move on to one of our more traditional slide formats here for variable operations and maintenance cost reviews. No changes to the slide. We are on track to get the FERC response by the end of November. We're requesting that by November 28th, hopefully sooner, in order to load our master file data effective for December 1st. You will see an associated notice go out about this as well, and we did confirm with the team that there's no data freeze for master file or any other impact that you'll notice with us setting this effective date. Okay. All right, so that concludes the 2023 slides that I have. So I will go ahead and move on to future releases. Okay, so for February of 2024, as we mentioned, we have RSEE Phase 2 Track 2. And you'll see the milestones here. What we have coming up is going to be the market simulation for the structured scenarios, including pro rata curtailment. And so that's planned for November to December. We are still working through the timeline in November, and so you'll see a notice go out when we have a schedule confirmed for market simulation. And as committed to before, we will provide the market simulation forums on Mondays and Thursdays to support this market simulation due to the different structured scenarios and support that we anticipate this meeting. And then the production activation, again, is planned for February 2024. All right, Carlos, I see you have a hand up. Please go ahead. You are on.
I'm audible? Yeah.
Yes,
Hi?
you are.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yes.
So one quick question. So this market sim is still claiming November, December, but if am I assuming it's not going to be this week, next week we have a holiday. I don't know how productive that will be. And then there's just like 3 days left in November. So realistically, how realistic is this plan that is still not confirmed for the market sim?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we have most of the changes that we need in map stage right now. But to your point, there is some testing that we want to conclude to make sure that we're ready to hit the ground running. So I would say a couple of things is I think it's realistic for us to have the code ready in map stage and certified by us by November. However, the execution of the scenarios themselves, we may reserve those to be executed in December when we'll have more support as well as availability for our customers. So if you look at it in 2 separate phases like that, Carlos, I think that November is reasonable for, again, just code being ready, but then the scenarios may shift to December for execution.
Okay.
All right.
So again, I guess the big problem that I see is the Thanksgiving holiday being a big break, so, in that sense. So would it be before or after that holiday break? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, it may shift to be later after that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carlos. All right, Tanya, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Follow on Carlos' question. You also mentioned Market Simco will be resumed. Do we have an idea as when the Market Simco is going to start?
So at this time, so it'll still follow the normal schedule of Mondays and Thursdays at 2 o'clock Pacific. And usually what we'd like to do is start it at the Monday or the Thursday prior to opening it up for simulation. And so we don't have a schedule yet, but I think once we finalize, I do expect that it could start up in November. And again, our goal is really to start it on Monday or Thursday prior to the start of sim.
So when do you think the next taco, or if I'm not even sure there will be a taco next week, do you think by early next week we'll have some information?
So, so first we will have a TOG next week just because of the, you know, especially the AUP and then the application delivery resiliency effort. So we will have a TOG next week, but I don't want you to have to rely on that. So we're committed to providing a notice when we have the market sim schedule. So any updates I can provide in the TOG, of course, next week, but also we are committed to providing a notice for the market simulation activities for this. So we can target to have that information go out by the beginning of next week.
Thank you. That would be great. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Okay, so I don't see any raised or messages in the chat, so I'll go ahead and move on. Okay, so on this slide, there are no changes. So again, as mentioned, I'm going to go quickly through the rest of the presentation as we're still working on some of the planning for this internally that I hope to have to by the end of the year or the beginning of the year's RUGs. Okay, so let me go to TSMSP2. For this one, we are still working on getting the BRS out to you this month for review. And there are tech specs for this one, and we are very close to getting the OASIS. There is going to be an OASIS tech spec for new reports, and we are close to getting those out. So I do anticipate that the tech spec for OASIS for this effort will be out this month as well. For TEA, no updates here, just still working on the BRS for publication by the end of this year. And then for RSEE, phase 2, track 3 for the DR inclusion. So we are still working through the planning, the schedule for this, and right now it's set as summer 2024 as the target, but this we're still working through the sequencing and the priority of this amongst the other 2024 efforts. All right, hybrid resources 2C for REMS is a completely independent and isolated effort planned for independent 2024. So we have just increased the focus on the planning for this one, but we don't have anything new to report, but hopefully within the next couple months, you'll see a more specific timeline for this one. And then for CRR, the updates that we have are that the November CPG is canceled, and so the next CPG is scheduled for December 13th. All right. And then when we get to DAME and EDAM, so for DAME, we are happy to report that the OASIS tech spec is published on the dev site now. So that was made available November 9th. So please take a look at that if you're interested and impacted by that. And then we have Cyber, Master File, and CMRI that we are working on the tech specs for, that we have a target of publishing those by November 28th. And so that's the most significant change here. And what you'll see probably in the next couple of rugs is going to be a timeline that our team has put together for the market simulation breakdown that we have for DAME, for EDAM, and then for WEIM for 2026. We don't have that in today's presentation yet, but that's coming soon. And then for Gaston, I just see a message in the chat about today's presentation that will be available on the CAISO website under meetings and events and under the RUG meeting later today. Okay. All right. And then no other changes here. The other significant effort is the config guides that we revised the schedule for last RUG, and so that remains. Okay. All right. Now for EDAM, no changes, no significant changes to report here. And that concludes the presentation, but I just did want to look at the calendar for the remaining RUG meetings for this year. We do have one on the 12th and the 26th. So I may cancel the RUG on the 26th, depending on how the one on the December 12th goes. All right. And that concludes our presentation for today. Are there any, I see another question from Jennifer that I'll take offline, but are there any other questions or comments? Chinyi, please go ahead.
Yeah, by looking at the calendar, do you have one on the 28th for the RUG? Or it's going to be?
Oh, I'm sorry. I do have a RUG on the 28th. Yes, that one we will hold.
Okay.
So you're right. On the 17th of December. So,
Thank
all right.
you.
And then, thank you. Okay. I don't see any other hands raised or any additional messages in the chat. So I'll go ahead and update this presentation, get it posted, and it should be available shortly. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you again in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Thanks, Trin.